The twin boys had always been close, almost like two halves of the same thought. They shared the same birthday, the same laugh that made people turn their heads, and the same quiet confidence that came from growing up with a father who always reminded them that being kind was just as important as being smart. So when they walked into the bank that warm afternoon, they carried that same quiet confidence with them. Nothing about the moment felt unusual. They had been preparing for this day for weeks, practicing how to talk to the teller, what information to bring, and how to stay calm even if something didn't go perfectly. It was supposed to be simple. Walk in, deposit their scholarship check, walk out, and maybe grab something sweet from the bakery across the street. The bank lobby was busy, but not crowded. People moved with the slow rhythm of a weekday afternoon. The twins stepped inside, holding onto the envelope with the check tucked neatly inside. They had earned it from a national youth science competition, something they had worked on for nearly half a year. Their project had taken countless hours, late nights, and arguments about details that only twins could fight about and then laugh about minutes later. Winning the scholarship had been a huge moment for them, the kind of thing they talked about for days. They wanted to handle the deposit by themselves to prove they were responsible enough. Their father agreed, though he made them practice how to speak clearly and answer any questions the bank might ask. They joined the line, standing quietly behind an older man reading something on his phone. One twin held the envelope while the other carried their small notebook, where they had written everything down: account number, ID copies, notes about what to say, even reminders like, "Don't forget to smile." They were nervous, but also excited. It felt like a small step into adulthood, and they couldn't wait to tell their father how smoothly everything went as they waited. They whispered back and forth about the project they wanted to start with the scholarship money. They had dreams that were bigger than their age. One wanted to buy parts to build a small robot they had been designing for months. The other hoped to save most of the money and invest it later. Their father had taught them the value of planning ahead. Even when you were young, people in line glanced at them now and then, noticing their gentle excitement. They didn't bother anyone. They didn't speak loudly. They simply shared their dreams in soft voices that blended with the slow sounds of printers, footsteps, and conversations happening all around them. When their turn finally came, the teller behind the glass smiled warmly. She looked tired, but she gave them the kind of smile that made you feel seen. The twin holding the envelope stepped forward slightly and greeted her politely. They had practiced this part many times, and they were proud of how natural it sounded. They explained they wanted to deposit their scholarship check. The teller nodded encouragingly. She asked for their account information, and they handed it over exactly as they had rehearsed. Everything was going smoothly, better than they expected. The teller opened the envelope, glanced at the check, and her eyebrows lifted with surprise at the amount. It wasn't a small scholarship. It was something people worked hard for, something that made you stand up a little straighter when you earned it. Before she could say anything, a voice interrupted from the side. A sharp voice, the kind of voice that didn't sound curious, but suspicious. The kind that made the muscles in your back tighten before you even understood why. The bank manager stepped forward. He had been standing near the office door, arms crossed, watching the lobby with an expression that didn't look particularly warm. His eyes went straight to the check in the teller's hand. He didn't even look at the twins at first. He just focused on the paper as if it didn't belong there. The twins exchanged a quick glance. They hadn't expected anyone else to get involved. The teller seemed uncomfortable as the manager approached her station. "What's this?" the manager asked, his voice a little too loud for a calm afternoon. The teller hesitated. "It's a scholarship check they're depositing." "How much?" the manager asked flatly, even though he could read the amount from where he stood. The twins stood quietly. They didn't want to interrupt. They didn't want to cause trouble. Their father had told them that patience and politeness could calm almost any situation, but the manager didn't look calm. He held out his hand. The teller looked unsure, but passed the check to him. The way he grabbed it made the twins feel uneasy, like he had already made a decision about them before he even said a word. He looked from the check to the boys, finally taking a closer look at them. "And you two are depositing this?" he asked, as if the idea didn't make sense. One twin nodded politely. Yes, sir. It's our scholarship award. The manager didn't respond to that. Instead, he let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh, though not a friendly one. He turned the check around in his hand like he was looking for something wrong with it. Where did you say you got this? He asked, his voice heavier now. The twins had explained it clearly the first time, but they repeated it, describing the national competition and the project they had worked on. They spoke calmly, even though worry was starting to grow in their chest. The manager didn't seem convinced. He leaned slightly toward the teller window. This needs verification, he announced. A check like this doesn't just show up from nowhere. The teller tried to speak gently. They have the documents, the manager cut her off. Proper verification, he repeated. We can't just accept anything people bring in. People nearby had begun to notice his tone. The older man in line behind them tilted his head, watching the interaction more closely now. A woman waiting for a withdrawal shifted uncomfortably. Sensing the tension, the twins tried again to explain, offering their certificates and ID copies, but the manager didn't take them. He didn't ask to see them. He didn't even look at the folder one of the twins held out politely with both hands. He simply narrowed his eyes and said, "Where are your parents?" The twins felt heat rise in their cheeks. They were old enough to handle a deposit. They had prepared for this. Their father trusted them with this responsibility. But suddenly, standing in front of the manager, they felt small. Not because of their own uncertainty, but because the manager seemed determined to make them feel unprepared. Even though they weren't, "We came on our own," one twin answered softly. "Our father knows we're here." The manager raised an eyebrow. Un hung. He said it like he didn't believe a word they said. He held the check between his fingers. And for a moment, the twins thought he was finally going to hand it back, or at least let the teller continue. But instead, he did something that made the entire line fall. Silent, he crumpled the check between his hands. Slowly, firmly, like it was nothing more than a piece of trash that had been brought in to waste his time. The twins stared, their eyes widening. It felt like the world had slowed down for a moment. That scholarship hadn't just been money. It had been the proof of their hard work, their dedication, their dreams. And now it sat crushed in the fist of someone who didn't even know them. "You need to bring a parent if you want to deal with large checks," the manager said, shaking his head. "We're not processing this today." The teller looked horrified. "Sir," I said, "we're not processing it," he snapped, glaring at her briefly before turning his attention back to the boys. "Come back with someone who can actually verify this. Until then, this isn't going anywhere." He dropped the crumpled check on the counter in front of them. A small, shaken sound escaped one of the twins, something between disbelief and hurt. The other twin reached to pick up the check carefully, trying not to show how much the moment stung. They didn't want to make a scene. They didn't want to argue. They had always been taught to stay calm, even when things felt unfair. But inside, something felt heavy. The kind of heavy that made the air feel thick around them. The older man behind them stepped forward slightly as if he wanted to intervene. Others in line exchanged looks, the kind of looks that silently asked, "Does this really seem right?" The twins stood quietly, their hands trembling just a little. They looked at the manager, hoping maybe he would change his mind or at least explain more gently. But he had already turned away, walking back toward his office without another word. Leaving the teller and the entire lobby stunned, the teller leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to them. "You didn't deserve that." The twins didn't blame her. They could see she felt helpless. They managed a small nod, though their voices wouldn't come out. They looked down at the wrinkled check. Their hard-earned achievement now bent and folded like it didn't matter. They stepped away from the counter, moving slowly, trying to keep their emotions together. They sat down on one of the chairs near the entrance, not sure what to do next. The envelope was now useless. The check felt ruined. Their confidence had cracked in places they didn't expect. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. They just sat there, staring at the paper that had once made them so proud. People in the lobby watched quietly, some shaking their heads. The world felt oddly distant, like they were sitting behind glass. Finally, one twin looked at the other and whispered, Should we call Dad? The question hung in the air, not out of fear, not out of dependence, but because something about what had just happened didn't feel right. They had been prepared. They had followed every step, and yet they had been treated as if none of it mattered. The other twin nodded slowly, still holding the check with careful fingers. As if trying to protect what was left of it, they took a breath, steadying themselves, and then they reached into their pocket for their phone. For a long moment, the twins just sat there with the phone resting between them on the bench near the bank's entrance. Neither of them reached for it right away. They were still trying to process everything that had happened in the last few minutes. It felt unreal, like the kind of thing you see happening to someone else but never imagine happening to you. The crumpled check lay in one twin's lap, still warm from being squeezed in the manager's hand. Even though it was only paper, it felt heavy, like it carried every bit of disappointment they were feeling. People around them kept glancing over with looks that mixed sympathy and concern. But no one said anything. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Maybe they didn't want to get involved. Or maybe they were shocked in their own quiet ways. The teller, who had seemed so warm at first, kept looking over as well, her expression soft and apologetic, like she wished she could fix everything herself. But the twins knew she couldn't. She had tried. It wasn't her fault. Finally, one twin took a slow breath and picked up the phone. "We should call Dad," he whispered again, this time sounding more sure. His brother nodded, though he didn't hide the sadness in his eyes. The call felt like a big step, like admitting that something had gone wrong. Even though they had done everything right, the phone rang once, twice, and then their father picked up. His voice was calm, the same steady tone he always used when he answered calls from his kids, even when he was busy. "Everything okay?" he asked. He always started with that question, no matter the time of day. The twin holding the phone swallowed, trying to steady his voice. "Dad." Something happened. There was a short pause on the other end. Not a silence of anger or impatience, more like concern. "Tell me," their father said gently. So they told him. They explained how they came to deposit the scholarship check, how the teller had been kind, how the manager stepped in, how he questioned everything without listening, and how he had crumpled the check right in front of them. Their father didn't interrupt. He didn't gasp, didn't huff, didn't make dramatic sounds. He just listened. That was something he was good at, listening until the end. When the twins finished, there was another pause. This one felt different. It wasn't heavy, but it wasn't light either. It was thoughtful, like their father was choosing his next words carefully. "Stay where you are," he said finally, his voice still steady. "I'll be there in a little bit." The simplicity of the words made the twins exhale in relief. They didn't want their father to rush or panic. They just wanted him to be there, someone who understood, someone who could guide them. They didn't want him to yell at anyone or cause trouble. They just needed someone to help them make sense of what had happened. After the call ended, the twins sat quietly again. But now the silence felt different. It wasn't just disappointment anymore. There was also a sense of waiting, a soft kind of hope that things might turn around once their father arrived. One twin smoothed the wrinkled edges of the check with gentle fingers, almost like trying to smooth out what had gone wrong earlier. "Do you think he's mad?" one twin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not at us," the other twin replied. He sounded more sure than he felt, but he knew their father well enough. He wasn't the type to get angry without understanding the full picture, and he definitely wasn't the type to blame his children for something they didn't cause. The twins glanced toward the counter again. The teller avoided eye contact with the manager, who had returned to his office and closed the door as if nothing unusual had happened. The lobby felt different now. People weren't chatting softly like before. They weren't relaxing in line or scrolling through their phones. They kept their eyes low, or looked at the twins from the corner of their vision. The tension lingered in the room like a quiet, unwelcome visitor. As the minutes passed, the twins tried to talk about other things to ease the heaviness in their minds. They talked about the robot design they wanted to build. They talked about the fact that the bakery across the street might still have the small chocolate pastries they liked. They talked about how they hoped the teller wouldn't get in trouble for speaking up. But no matter what they said, The memory of the manager crumpling the check stayed vivid. Then the bank doors opened, letting in a bit of warm afternoon air. The twins looked up at the same moment. Their father walked in, not in a rush, but with a calm and purposeful stride. He wore simple clothes, nothing that would make anyone think twice. He didn't carry anything except his phone, tucked loosely in his hand. His expression was composed, the kind of calm that comes from experience and confidence, not anger. The moment he saw the twins on the bench, his face softened. He walked over, placing a gentle hand on each of their shoulders. "You all right?" he asked quietly. The twins nodded, though one of them blinked a little too quickly, trying to hide how shaken he still felt. Their father noticed, of course. He always noticed. "Let me see the check," he said softly. The twins handed it to him. He unfolded it carefully, smoothing the lines that had been pressed into it by the manager's fist. Even crumpled, the award amount and their names were still clear. Their father traced a finger along the edge of the paper, taking a slow breath before looking toward the teller stations. "Did anyone here help you?" he asked. "The teller tried," one twin replied. "But the manager, he didn't let her." Her father nodded in understanding. Then, with the same calmness he always carried, he gestured for them to stand with him. They walked together toward the teller window, moving slowly so the twins didn't feel rushed. The teller straightened immediately when she saw them approaching. "Sir," she said gently, "I'm really sorry about what happened." "I tried to, I know," he said kindly. "Thank you for taking care of them." Her eyes softened with relief. She seemed grateful that he wasn't directing his frustration at her. She pointed subtly toward the office door, the one the manager had disappeared through earlier. "He's in there," she whispered. Their father nodded. "I'll talk to him." But before he did, he turned back to the twins. He looked at them for a moment, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Stay right here," he said. "I won't be long." He walked past the teller stations with steady steps, stopping outside the office door. He didn't fling it open. He didn't pound on it. He simply knocked once firm, but respectful. The manager opened the door, and for a split second, his expression was polite. Maybe he thought it was a normal customer or someone with a simple question. But when his eyes landed on the twins standing nearby and then shifted to the man at his door, something in his expression tightened. "Yes," he asked, the politeness slipping quickly. "I'm here about what happened with my sons," their father said calmly. The manager blinked as if he didn't quite understand. "Your sons?" he repeated, glancing back at the twins. "Yes," their father said. His voice remained steady, almost peaceful. "They came here to deposit their scholarship check. I'd like to talk about why that wasn't allowed." The manager crossed his arms, shifting his weight slightly. "As I told them earlier," he began, "we need proper verification for checks of that amount. They didn't have what we required." "That everything required," their father replied, still calm. He wasn't raising his voice. He didn't need to. They had their documents. They had identification. They had the award letter. And as I understand it, he unfolded the crumpled check and held it up slightly. "You didn't ask to see any of it before refusing them." The manager's gaze flicked to the check, and something uncomfortable passed through his eyes. But he tried to keep his posture rigid. "I'm responsible for the safety of this branch," he said flatly. "Suspicious transactions need to be handled carefully." "Suspicious," their father repeated gently, not sarcastically, just thoughtfully. "What exactly made this suspicious to you?" The manager hesitated. He didn't have a good answer. His eyes darted once toward the twins, then away again. His posture tightened a bit more. "It's standard protocol," he insisted. The twins watched from a distance, trying to read their father's face. He wasn't angry, at least not in the way most people get angry. His shoulders were relaxed. His breathing was calm. But there was something powerful in the way he stood there, quiet, steady, unshaken. "Let me be clear," he said, still holding the check gently between his fingers. "My sons earned this. They worked hard for it. They came prepared. They were polite. And they followed every rule. The only thing they didn't expect was disrespect." The lobby had grown silent again. People were listening, even if they pretended not to. The teller behind them stood frozen, her hands resting lightly on her desk. The manager looked away, his jaw tight. "If you want to process the check now, I suppose we can take another look," he said stiffly. "That won't be enough," their father replied softly. "But we can start there." He stepped back slightly and gestured for the twins to come over. They walked toward him slowly, unsure what was about to happen, but trusting him like they always did. Their father handed the check back to one of them, smoothing the last crease with his thumb. "We'll process it together," he said. "Properly." The twins nodded, feeling a small, warm wave of relief. But the moment wasn't over. Not yet. They could feel it in the air, in the quiet way their father stood. In the uncomfortable, quiet spreading across the lobby, something else was coming, something bigger. They didn't know what it was yet. But they could sense it like the moment right, before a door opens, and they were standing right in front of it. The twins stood beside their father at the teller window, trying their best to stay calm, even though the entire bank lobby felt like it had stopped breathing. People who had been waiting in line glanced over discreetly, while others simply watched openly, curious about what might unfold next. The teller at the window, the same woman who had helped the twins earlier, straightened nervously the moment she saw all three of them standing there. "Sir," she said to their father, her voice soft but steady, "if you give me the check, I can start the process right now." Their father offered her a warm, reassuring smile. "Thank you," he replied. "I appreciate your help." The twins handed the check to him, and he gently placed it on the counter. The teller picked it up carefully, as if it were something fragile. She smoothed it out as best she could, her brow furrowing at the wrinkles caused earlier. Then she typed something into her computer and scanned the check. The twins leaned forward slightly, wanting to see what she was doing but also trying not to look nervous. Behind them, the manager hovered a short distance away, watching with stiff shoulders. He didn't say anything. Maybe he didn't want to draw attention to himself. Maybe he didn't want to risk saying something that would make things worse. Or maybe he was already starting to realize that this situation was bigger than he expected. Whatever the reason, he stayed silent. The quiet only made the tension heavier. "Everything looks correct so far," the teller said after a moment. "I just need to enter the verification code from the scholarship program." She reached for the award letter the twins had brought with them. She typed in the code carefully, double-checking every number. Her fingers moved slowly, like she understood how important this was, while she worked. Their father rested a hand lightly on each twin's back, a silent reminder that they weren't alone. The twins didn't say anything, but they leaned into him a little. They needed that comfort more than they realized. Finally, the teller hit the last key and waited. A small loading bar appeared on her screen. The seconds that followed felt unusually long. The twins watched the bar fill, inch by inch, like it carried the weight of everything that had gone wrong and everything that could be fixed. Then the screen flashed green. "Approved," the teller said, letting out a breath she probably hadn't realized she was holding. "It's verified. Everything is legitimate." One twin's shoulders sagged with relief. The other twin blinked, staring at the screen as if he couldn't believe that something so simple could have caused so much stress. Their father nodded slowly, though the quiet calm in his expression didn't change. "Good," he said softly. "Thank you." The teller printed the deposit receipt and handed it to the twins. They held it carefully, almost reverently, like it was more than a piece of paper. It was proof that they had done everything right. Proof that what happened earlier wasn't their fault. But even with the successful deposit, the air didn't lighten. Not fully. Something was still sitting in the room, some unfinished tension, some quiet expectation. Their father turned, facing the manager now. His voice was calm, but there was something new beneath it, something firm and unshakable. "I'd like to speak with someone above your position," he said to the manager. "Someone who oversees this branch." The manager stiffened. "There's no need," he said quickly. "We've handled everything. The check is deposited. The issue is resolved." "That's not true," their father replied gently. "The check might be deposited, but the issue isn't resolved." The manager opened his mouth as if to argue, but then closed it again. His eyes flicked around the lobby. He could see the customers watching. He could see the teller's uneasy expression. And he could see the quiet steadiness in the father's eyes, steadiness that didn't look like someone easily dismissed. "There's a regional supervisor," the manager finally muttered. "But he's not here. Call him," their father said. The manager swallowed. It was clear he didn't want to, but he also didn't want to deal with the consequences of not doing it. I'll make the call," he said quietly. He turned toward his office, walking stiffly like every step weighed more than the last. The door closed behind him. The twins and their father stepped aside, giving space to the next customer. But the customers didn't step forward. No one was eager to interrupt whatever was happening. Instead, people kept glancing at the twins and their father with quiet support, like they were witnessing something meaningful. One older man, who had spoken up earlier, lifted a hand in a small gesture of encouragement. The twins gave him a grateful nod. After a few minutes, the manager came back out of his office. His posture had changed. His face was pale. Something about him looked nervous, very nervous. "He'll be here soon," the manager said. "He wants to speak to you personally." Their father nodded. "Thank you." The manager swallowed hard but didn't speak again. He moved behind the counter, avoiding everyone's eyes. The twins and their father took a seat on the bench again. Their father stayed calm, but the twins could tell he was thinking deeply. They leaned closer to him. "Are we in trouble?" one twin asked. "No," their father said gently. "You didn't do anything wrong. Is he in trouble?" the other twin whispered, glancing toward the manager. Their father paused, choosing his words carefully. "I don't want to focus on punishment," he finally said. "I want to focus on accountability. What happened was wrong. Not because of the amount of the check, not because of who I am, but because respect should be given to every person who walks through that door." The twins nodded slowly. Hearing it said like that made something settle inside them. They understood now that this moment wasn't just about them. It was about something larger, something that mattered beyond that day. About 20 minutes later, the bank doors swung open again. This time, a tall man in a neatly pressed shirt and a company badge walked in. He scanned the lobby with a serious expression until he spotted the twins and their father. His eyes widened slightly in recognition. He walked toward them quickly, stopping right in front of their father. "Sir," the supervisor said, his tone both respectful and urgent. "I came as soon as I got the call." "I'm very sorry this happened." The twins looked up at the supervisor. He seemed genuinely concerned, not the fake concern people show when they're trying to save face, but real concern. The kind that comes from understanding something serious has taken place. Their father stood to greet him. "Thank you for coming," he said calmly. "I understand there was an issue with the deposit." The supervisor asked. "There was an issue with how my sons were treated." Their father corrected gently. The supervisor nodded slowly. "I'd like to hear everything from you. I already spoke briefly with the manager, but I want the full story." So their father explained, clearly, calmly, and without exaggeration. He talked about how the twins had followed every rule, how they had come prepared, how the teller had been supportive, and how the manager had stepped in with assumptions instead of questions. He explained how the check had been crumpled and dismissed without a chance for verification. The supervisor listened with growing concern. He didn't interrupt, didn't defend the bank, didn't try to shift blame. He simply listened. When the story ended, he let out a slow exhale. "This is unacceptable," he said quietly. "Not just from a customer service standpoint, but from a basic human standpoint. I'm very sorry your sons experienced this," turned slightly, looking toward the teller. "Thank you for doing the right thing," he told her. The teller nodded, grateful to be acknowledged. Then the supervisor looked toward the manager, who had been standing frozen near the end of the counter. "I need to speak with you privately," he said firmly. The manager hesitated, then followed the supervisor toward his office. The door closed behind them, and although nothing could be heard through the walls, the weight of the conversation inside was unmistakable. While they waited, the twins sat close to their father. One leaned his shoulder against him. The other fiddled with the deposit receipt in his hands. Their father placed an arm around them both, pulling them close. "You handled yourselves well today," he told them softly. "I'm proud of you." The twins didn't say anything, but their faces warmed. Those words meant more than anything that had happened that day. After several minutes, the supervisor returned. His expression was serious but composed. He approached the twins and their father again. "I've taken immediate action regarding the manager," he said. "There will be a formal review, and appropriate steps will be taken. This will not be ignored." The twins didn't know exactly what that meant, but they didn't need all the details. They just needed to know that someone understood the importance of what had happened. The supervisor continued, "We will also be scheduling training for all staff, focusing on communication, respect, and proper procedures. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." Their father nodded. "That's what matters." The supervisor paused. "If there's anything else you need, please don't hesitate to reach out." "We're okay," their father replied. "Thank you." With that, the supervisor gave a final respectful nod and stepped away. The tension in the lobby finally began to ease. People returned to their conversations, their phones, their errands. The teller offered the twins a warm smile before returning to her work. The twins and their father walked toward the exit together. As they stepped outside, the afternoon sun felt brighter than before, that because the day had suddenly improved. But because something heavy had finally lifted, the twins took a deep breath, letting the air wash away the final pieces of the earlier tension. Their father looked at them with a soft smile. "Ready to go home?" They nodded. But as they walked toward the car, one of the twins looked up and asked, "Dad, the supervisor recognized you." "How?" Their father paused, considering whether to explain now or later. But he saw the curiosity in their faces, the need to understand the full story, and he knew part 4 of their day was only just beginning. He placed a gentle hand on each twin's shoulder. "There's something I should tell you," he said quietly, and with that one sentence, the next chapter of their day opened wide when their father walked deeper into the bank lobby. The atmosphere shifted in a way that even the twins felt in their bones. It was not loud or dramatic. It was subtle, the kind of change that happens when someone enters a room with a calm sense of control, not forced or rehearsed, but simply part of who they are. People straightened a little. A few stopped pretending to look at their phones. Even the manager, who had looked smug minutes earlier, froze for a brief second when he noticed him approaching. Their father didn't march in with anger. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look around to see if anyone was watching. He walked with the quiet confidence of a man used to solving problems, not escalating them. The twins followed closely behind him, feeling both relieved and nervous at the same time. The regional supervisor, who had appeared just moments earlier, watched their father with a look that suggested she'd heard his name somewhere before. She didn't speak yet. She seemed to be waiting, giving him space to address what needed to be addressed. Their father reached the desk where the manager stood stiffly behind the counter. The manager tried to pretend nothing unusual had happened, but there was an unmistakable twitch in his jaw and a slight tremble in his hands as he straightened some papers that were already perfectly aligned. "Good afternoon," their father said calmly. "I understand you were the one who handled my son's check." The manager forced a smile, the kind that never reaches the eyes. "Yes, I was assisting them earlier. There seemed to be some confusion about the check they brought in." Their father nodded slowly, almost politely. "Confusion," he repeated, like he was tasting the word. "They told me you questioned the authenticity of their scholarship check." "Well," the manager said, clearing his throat, "the amount was unusually high for children their age, and we have to be cautious. Fraud attempts happen frequently, and sometimes young people are used without knowing it." The twins exchanged a glance. They had heard enough already. It was clear the manager was trying to make his actions seem normal, but there was nothing normal about crumpling a customer's check and speaking to them as if they were untrustworthy strangers. Their father stayed steady. "I understand caution," he said. "I don't understand disrespect, and I certainly don't understand damaging a customer's property." The manager blinked. "I didn't damage anything. It was just a piece of paper that represented months of work and achievement for my sons." Their father replied, still in that same quiet voice. a piece of paper that carried their names earned through their effort and dedication. Someone near the back of the line murmured in agreement. A few people nodded. The twins felt something shift again, like the room itself was siding with the truth. The regional supervisor stepped forward finally. "Sir," she said gently, "I'd like to personally apologize on behalf of the bank. I am still gathering details, but I assure you we take this incident seriously." The manager shot her a quick, irritated look, but she didn't react. Her attention was on the twins' father, and it was clear she wanted to handle the matter correctly. Their father nodded at her, appreciative, but not satisfied yet. "I'm glad to hear that," he said. "But before we go any further, I'd like to understand what made the manager assume the check wasn't real." The manager let out a stiff breath. "I didn't assume anything. I simply followed procedure." "Oh." Their father turned his head slightly. "Crumpling a check is procedure?" The manager looked caught, but he tried to keep his voice steady. "It wasn't crumpled on purpose. I was trying to make sure it wasn't tampered with." Their father looked at him for a long moment. Not angry, not aggressive, just observant. Like he was taking in every detail and storing it away. "Let me show you something," their father said softly. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Inside it were neatly organized documents, a copy of the scholarship award letter, printed emails from the scholarship board, and a formal verification sheet. He placed them gently on the counter. "This," he said, pointing to the letter, "is the official confirmation of the scholarship my sons received. This," he added, as he pointed to the email, "is the record of communication I personally had with the committee. And this," he said, tapping the verification sheet, "is the approval sent directly to my office." The manager glanced at the documents quickly, then looked away as if embarrassed. The twins watched silently, feeling the tension rise even though their father's voice never did. The regional supervisor leaned in to look, her expression shifting from professional to slightly stunned. "This is very clear documentation," she said. "Your sons certainly have earned something impressive." "They have," their father replied warmly, looking back at the twins with a proud smile. "And more importantly, they deserve to be treated with respect when they brought their check in." A quiet hush rolled through the lobby wordlessly. Like everyone silently agreed, the supervisor looked at the manager now with a tone that left no room for excuses. "Why was this not handled properly?" she asked. The manager swallowed hard. "I may have acted too quickly," he muttered. "That's one way to describe it," the supervisor said. She turned to their father and spoke with sincerity. "Sir, I want to make this right immediately. If you give me the check, I will process it myself." The twins' father nodded and signaled for one of the boys to hand it over. The teller who had been kind earlier stepped forward quietly. "I can process it as well," she said, offering a small smile to the twins. "I'm really sorry about how things happened before." Twins smiled back, grateful for her kindness. She had been the only one earlier who showed them simple respect. Their father glanced at her and nodded. "I appreciate your help," he said. The teller looked toward the supervisor for approval, and the supervisor nodded. The teller took the check with careful hands, as if she wanted to show the twins that she valued what it represented. She walked to her station and began entering information, her fingers moving quickly but gently. While she worked, their father turned back to the manager. "I'd like to ask something," he said. "When my sons walked up to the counter, did you believe they didn't belong here?" The question hung in the air like a soft echo. The manager's face tightened. "I don't judge people," he said weakly. "I just follow rules." Their father studied him quietly. "Rules aren't the problem," he said. "The way we use them is—" The manager's eyes flickered. He had no response this time. Before anything else could be said, the teller came back with a printed slip. "The deposit is complete," she said with a smile. "Everything went through perfectly." The twins stared at the slip in her hand. It looked so normal, so simple, and yet it represented the end of a moment that had felt anything but simple. Their father accepted the slip, thanking her genuinely. The twins felt the weight lift from their shoulders, replaced by a quiet relief. But the moment wasn't finished yet. The regional supervisor stood in front of the manager and said, "I'd like you to step into my office." "Now," the manager hesitated. Is that necessary? Yes, she said firmly. It is. He walked toward the office reluctantly, shoulders tight, face pale. The twins didn't feel triumphant watching him go. They felt something different, something closer to understanding that actions have consequences. The supervisor turned back to their father. If you have time, I'd appreciate if you could join me as well. There are some things I'd like to discuss and clarify. Their father nodded. I will. But my priority is making sure my sons are okay. Both twins nodded quickly, assuring him they were fine. They didn't want to cause more trouble. They didn't want their father to stay in a room talking about something that had already drained them. But they also knew he would make whatever choice he felt was necessary. He placed a hand gently on each of their shoulders. Go wait by the bench, he said. I won't be long. They walked to the same bench where they had sat earlier, only this time the air around them felt different. A few people offered them supportive smiles. One older woman nodded with quiet approval. Another man whispered to his friend, good thing their dad came. That manager really crossed a line. The twins didn't respond. They just took a deep breath and let it out slowly. The worst part was behind them now. They could feel it through the glass walls of the supervisor's office. They could see their father talking calmly while the manager sat stiffly with his hands clasped tightly. The supervisor listened carefully, sometimes nodding, sometimes writing notes. It wasn't a scene of anger. It was a scene of accountability. After a long while, their father stepped out of the office. The manager didn't follow. He stayed inside, looking down at the desk in front of him. Their father walked toward the twins with a soft smile. All right, he said, resting a hand on their shoulders again. Let's go home. As they made their way toward the exit, the teller called out softly, Have a good day, boys. They smiled and waved. It felt good. Simple, kind, human. The moment they stepped outside, the sunlight felt different, brighter, warmer, like the day had turned itself right side up again. Their father didn't launch into a lecture or a long explanation. He didn't need to. Instead, as they walked toward the car, he said quietly, I'm proud of how you handled yourselves. The twins looked at each other, trying not to smile too wide. It felt good, really good to hear him say that. They got into the car, closed the doors, and finally let out the breath they'd been holding all day. The engine started softly, and their father pulled away from the bank. Leaving the tension behind and carrying only the lesson forward, the day wasn't over yet, and neither was the story. The drive home felt unusually quiet. Not because anyone was upset anymore, but because the events of the day were still settling in. The twins sat in the back seat, looking out their windows as the city passed by slowly. Their father kept one hand on the wheel and the other resting lightly near the controls, his fingers tapping gently in a calm rhythm. He didn't seem angry. He didn't seem stressed. He simply looked thoughtful, as if he were arranging the day's lessons in his mind before speaking them out loud. The twins weren't sure if they should say something first. They kept glancing at each other, waiting to see which one of them would break the silence. In the end, neither did. It didn't feel like an uncomfortable silence. It felt more like a quiet moment everyone needed, when the car finally turned into their neighborhood. Their father spoke for the first time since leaving the bank. I know today was hard, he said softly. But you both handled yourselves in a way that made me proud. The twins didn't say anything right away. They just listened. Their father's voice had that warm tone he used. When he wasn't trying to teach or correct, just connect. People don't always treat you based on who you are, he continued. Sometimes they treat you based on what they assume, and assumptions can be dangerous if they're not checked. One twin finally leaned forward a little. Do you think you'll get fired? He asked quietly. Their father sighed, not angry, just honest. I don't know, he said. That's not my decision. But I do believe he'll face consequences for what he did. Do you want him to get fired? The other twin asked. Their father shook his head gently. I don't want anyone to lose their job. What I want is for people to do better, to learn, to understand the weight of their actions. The twins sat back again, absorbing that. Their father rarely spoke out of anger. He always spoke from a place of understanding, even when situations were unfair. When they reached home, the sun had dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm orange glow across their yard. Everything looked peaceful, so different from the tension inside the bank. It felt like stepping into a different world. They went inside, and the house greeted them with the familiar quiet of home. Their father set his briefcase on the table and loosened his tie, letting out a deep breath. The twins dropped their backpacks near the couch and flopped down. Feeling the soft cushions finally relax their shoulders, their father walked over and sat across from them, leaning slightly forward with his elbows on his knees. "I want you both to understand something," he said gently. "You did nothing wrong today. Nothing." The twins nodded slowly. "What that manager did was unprofessional," he continued. "But more than that, it was careless. People in positions of authority must be careful with how they treat others." One of the boys asked, "Do you think he treated us that way because we're, young?" Their father watched them thoughtfully. "Maybe partly," he said. "But it wasn't just that. It might have been the amount of the check. It might have been that he made assumptions based on how you looked. It might have been a mix of reasons. We don't know exactly." Twins appreciated that he didn't sugarcoat things. He never did. He always told them the truth, but in a way that didn't make them feel small or scared. What matters, he added, is that you two didn't let the moment define you. You stayed calm. You stood up for yourselves. And you came to me when you weren't sure what to do. That's all anyone can ask. The twins sat quietly, letting his words sink in. After a moment, their father stood up. "Come on," he said with a small smile. "Let's eat something. I think we all need a break from thinking." They followed him into the kitchen. The fridge hummed softly, and the lights were warm and bright. Their father reached for ingredients, nothing fancy, just simple things they liked. As he cooked, the air slowly shifted from heavy to relaxed. The twins joked with each other again, nudging each other like they always did. For a while, the entire bank incident felt like a faraway memory. But later that night, after dinner and dishes and a long stretch of quiet, something unexpected happened. Their father's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it and frowned slightly when he saw the number. "Excuse me a moment," he said gently, and stepped into the other room. The twins, curious but respectful, stayed where they were. They couldn't hear the words clearly, but the tone of their father's voice carried just enough that they could tell it wasn't a casual call. It sounded serious but controlled. Calm, but firm. When he returned, he sat beside them again. "That was the regional supervisor," he said. Both twins straightened immediately. "What did she say?" one asked. "She wanted to update me on what happened after we left," he replied. "She reviewed the security footage with another senior officer, and she spoke to several witnesses." The twins exchanged a quick glance. "She wanted me to know," their father continued, "that the manager has been placed on leave while the bank completes a full investigation." Ack! The twins didn't cheer or smile. They stayed thoughtful. One twin asked hesitantly, "Is that good?" Their father nodded slowly. "It means the bank is taking responsibility," he said. "It means they're not ignoring what happened." He didn't seem happy or triumphant. He simply looked relieved, like something heavy had shifted off his shoulders. And he said they want to schedule training for their staff, not because of you two specifically, but because they now see how important it is. That part made the twins feel something warm. Like maybe the difficult moment they went through was turning into something that would help others. It didn't undo what happened, but it made the day feel less pointless. One twin spoke up softly. "Do you think he's sorry?" The manager. Their father thought about that. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I hope so. And even if he isn't, I hope he learns from this." The twins nodded again. Their father added, life will have moments like this. Sometimes people won't see you clearly. Sometimes they'll judge your abilities before knowing your story. But that doesn't change your worth, and it doesn't change what you're capable of. It was the kind of thing that might have felt like a speech if anyone else had said it. But coming from their father, it felt more like a promise, a reminder. A shield. The night stretched on quietly after that. The twins went to their room, lying on their beds, replaying the day in their minds, but in a calmer way. They talked softly to each other. Not about the anger, but about the moments of strength, how one twin had stayed calm, how the other had spoken up, how their father had walked into the bank like a steady force that grounded everything. Eventually, they fell asleep. Early the next morning, the twins woke to find their father already at the kitchen table, drinking tea and reading something on his laptop. He looked up and smiled when they entered. "Morning," he said. "Come sit." They sat down and he turned the laptop toward them. It showed an email. It was from the regional supervisor again. "I thought you two should see this." He said the email was long, but the most important part said that the bank had completed the first stage of its review and wanted to extend a formal, written apology to the twins. It also explained that the staff would undergo new training procedures, and the bank wanted to invite the twins and their father to a meeting later in the week if they felt comfortable to talk about how the bank could improve customer experience for young clients. One of the twins asked, "Do we have to go?" "No," their father said gently. "You don't have to do anything. But if you want to go, it could be helpful. You'd be showing them what respect looks like."